In the last 12 days, flash floods have killed at least 132 people across Afghanistan. Entire neighborhoods in the eastern city of Jalalabad are underwater. Roofs are collapsing on families as they sleep. Highways linking the capital to the rest of the country have been cut off. And the rain is not stopping. What is happening in Afghanistan right now is one of the deadliest ongoing disasters in the world, and it is barely making headlines outside the region. So let's break it down. What's happening, why it's happening, and why this keeps getting worse year after year. Let's start with the timeline. On March 26, 2026, heavy rainfall began across most of Afghanistan. It was the start of spring, and spring in Afghanistan means two things arrive at the same time: seasonal rains and snowmelt flowing down from the Hindu Kush mountain range. When those two forces combine, the valleys below can flood fast. Within the first few days, reports started coming in from multiple provinces. Flash floods and landslides were hitting communities in Herat in the west, Helmand in the south, Bagis, Uruzgan, Parwan, Maidan Wardak, Daikundi, and Logar in the center, and Nangarhar in the east. This was not a localized event, this was nationwide. By March 30th, at least 45 people had been killed across Afghanistan and neighboring Pakistan. Severe flooding and building collapses were the primary causes of death, and then the numbers started climbing fast. By April 4th, the Disaster Management Authority reported 77 dead and 137 injured over 10 days. 26 of those deaths had occurred in just the previous 48 hours. They reported 793 homes completely destroyed, another 2,743 damaged. More than 337 kilometers of roads, over 200 miles, had been washed away by floodwaters and landslides. Over 5,800 families had been affected. Agricultural land, irrigation canals, water wells, and businesses were all hit. By April 5th, the death toll had risen to 99. The spokesman for Afghanistan's National Disaster Management Authority, Hafiz Mohammed Yusuf Hamid, said heavy downpours since March 26 had unleashed widespread flooding, landslides, violent thunderstorms, and lightning strikes. He said the disaster had completely or partially destroyed 5,000 houses, washed away 355 kilometers of roads, and inundated more than 14,400 acres of agricultural land. A total of 8,532 families had been affected at that point. And he warned the meteorological department had issued fresh warnings of continued heavy rainfall across all 34 provinces. Then, on April 3rd, something else hit. A magnitude 5.8 earthquake struck northeastern Afghanistan near the border with Pakistan in Badakhshan province. Its epicenter was roughly 35 kilometers south of the village of Jurm at a depth of 186 kilometers. That earthquake killed 12 more people, injured 4, destroyed 5 houses, and damaged 33 more across Kabul, Panjshir, Logar, Nangarhar, Laghman, and Nuristan provinces. So now, communities already reeling from floods were also dealing with earthquake damage. By April 6th, the official death toll from extreme weather alone had climbed to 110, with 160 injured. Nearly 1,000 homes had been fully destroyed, and roughly 4,150 others damaged. The Kabul-Jalalabad highway, the main route connecting the capital to eastern Afghanistan and the Pakistani border, had been closed for 4 straight days. And then came April 7th. Afghan authorities reported 22 more people dead and 32 injured in just the previous 24 hours. 13 of those deaths happened in a single night in and around Jalalabad, when torrential rain caused the roofs of houses to collapse on people while they slept. Another 19 were injured in those same roof collapses. Large parts of Jalalabad were flooded overnight. In various parts of Nangarhar province, 104 people had to be airlifted to safety by helicopter after they became stranded by floodwaters. And by the latest confirmed reports, at least 132 people have been killed and 192 others injured since March 26th. The authorities have said these numbers could increase further. Now, the Kabul-Jalalabad highway is not the only route that has been shut down. The Salang Pass, a high mountain pass in the Hindu Kush that connects Kabul to the country's north, including major cities like Kunduz and Mazar-e-Sharif, has also been closed by flooding. Hundreds of kilometers of roads in various parts of the country have been destroyed by floods, landslides, and rockfalls. People are unable to reach the capital. Relief supplies are struggling to get through. The country's connectivity is fracturing. So that's what's happening. Now let's talk about why. Afghanistan is one of the most disaster-vulnerable countries on the planet. It is ranked as the second most disaster-prone nation in the world, behind only Haiti. Out of every 1 million Afghans, roughly 1,150 die each year due to natural disasters. That number is staggering when you compare it to global averages. Flooding is the most frequent natural disaster in Afghanistan, affecting more than 100,000 people annually. And spring is the deadliest season. Here's why. Afghanistan's geography is dominated by the Hindu Kush mountain range, which runs through the center and northeast of the country. In winter, those mountains accumulate enormous amounts of snow. When spring arrives, temperatures rise, and that snow begins to melt. At the same time, the spring rainy season brings heavy downpours. So you have snowmelt pouring down steep mountain valleys at the exact same time as heavy rainfall is saturating the ground. The result is flash flooding. Fast, powerful, and extremely dangerous. But the geography alone doesn't explain why so many people die. The real amplifier is poverty and infrastructure. More than 85% of Afghanistan's population depends on agriculture. Many communities are located in valleys and floodplains, close to the rivers and irrigation channels that sustain their crops and livelihoods. These are also the areas most exposed to flooding. The homes in many of these communities are built from mud brick, a traditional construction material that is inexpensive and widely available, but extremely vulnerable to water. When heavy rain falls for days or weeks at a time, these mud brick walls absorb water. They weaken, and they collapse. That is exactly what happened in Jalalabad on the night of April 7th, when 13 people were killed by falling roofs. On top of that, Afghanistan has very limited flood protection infrastructure. There are a few dams, levees, or flood-retaining walls in the areas that need them most. Early warning systems are minimal. Many rural communities receive no advance notice of incoming storms. When the water comes, there is often no time and no way to evacuate. Roads, bridges, and highways are also poorly built or maintained, meaning that when floodwaters hit, they don't just cause damage, they cut off entire regions. That's what we're seeing now with the Kabul-Jalalabad Highway and the Salang Pass. Communities become isolated, relief can't get in, people who need medical attention can't get out. And then there's the compounding factor. Afghanistan has been through decades of conflict. Infrastructure that might have been improved or modernized in a stable country has instead been repeatedly damaged or neglected. Investment in disaster preparedness has been minimal. The international community's focus has been largely on security, leaving disaster resilience as a secondary concern. All of this creates a situation where every spring becomes a test of survival for millions of Afghans, and every year the test gets harder. This brings us to the climate dimension. Now, I want to be careful here, because it is important not to oversimplify the connection between climate change and any single flood event. But what scientists and researchers have documented is clear. Climate change is intensifying the conditions that make spring flooding in Afghanistan so deadly. A major study by the World Weather Attribution Group found that extreme early spring rainfall in Afghanistan and Pakistan was made roughly twice as likely by El Niño conditions. Separately, the broader scientific consensus is that a warming atmosphere holds more moisture, which means heavier rainfall events. When those heavier rains fall on Afghanistan's steep terrain and saturated soils, the result is more severe and more frequent flooding. According to climate vulnerability assessments, the number of Afghans affected by flooding is expected to increase dramatically by 2050 as rainfall patterns shift and glacial melt from the Hindu Kush accelerates. And historical data supports this trajectory. In 2024, more than 300 people were killed in springtime flash floods across Afghanistan. That was one of the deadliest years in recent memory. Now, in 2026, we are barely 2 weeks into the spring flood season, and the toll has already surpassed 132. So this is not a one-time event, this is a recurring crisis. And it is intensifying. Let's also talk about what makes this year particularly difficult. The combination of hazards hitting Afghanistan right now is unusually severe. You have the ongoing heavy rainfall causing floods and landslides. You have thunderstorms with lightning strikes that have killed people in open areas. You have the magnitude 5.8 earthquake on April 3rd, which struck in the northeast, while communities were already dealing with flood damage. And you have the closure of major transportation arteries that is making it almost impossible for aid to move freely. The Afghanistan Meteorological Department has issued fresh warnings for continued heavy rainfall across the entire country. Every single one of Afghanistan's 34 provinces is under alert. This means the death toll is almost certainly going to rise. Relief organizations are working to reach affected communities, but the road closures and destroyed infrastructure are making that work dangerously slow. Rescue teams have been deployed to the worst-hit areas, and helicopter evacuations, like the 104 people airlifted in Nangarhar, show just how desperate conditions are on the ground. Now, let's put this in a broader context. Afghanistan is not the only place facing severe flooding right now. In Russia's Dagestan region, a dam burst and record rainfall have displaced over 1 million people. In Italy and Greece, Storm Erminio has caused flooding and infrastructure damage. In Taiwan, heavy rain triggered flooding and evacuations. In Colombia, months of unusual rainfall have affected tens of thousands of families. Around the world, spring 2026 is delivering an unusually intense season of flooding, severe storms, and extreme weather. But what sets Afghanistan apart is the sheer vulnerability of its population. This is a country where many people live in homes that can dissolve in heavy rain, where roads can vanish in a single storm, where hospitals and schools sit in floodplains, where there is no insurance, no savings buffer, and for most families, no safety net at all. When a flood hits a wealthy country, the damage is measured in dollars. When a flood hits Afghanistan, the damage is measured in lives, and the scale of what is unfolding here deserves far more global attention than it is getting. Let me give you a few numbers to sit with. 132 people confirmed dead, at least 192 injured, nearly 1,000 homes fully destroyed, over 4,000 more damaged, more than 14,000 acres of farmland ruined, over 350 kilometers of roads gone, 8,500 families, that's roughly 50,000 to 60,000 people, directly affected. Highways closed, passes blocked, helicopters deployed for rescue, a 5.8 magnitude earthquake layered on top, and a weather forecast that says more rain is coming. All of this in just 12 days. So what happens next? In the immediate term, the priority is search and rescue and getting emergency aid, food, clean water, shelter, and medical supplies to affected communities. Many of these communities are now cut off by road. Helicopter operations and alternative supply routes are being explored, but Afghanistan's mountainous terrain makes all of this extremely challenging. The Disaster Management Authority has warned the public to stay away from riverbanks and flood-prone areas. But for millions of Afghans who live in those areas, who farm that land, who depend on that water, there is no easy option. Moving to higher ground often means moving away from their only source of income. In the medium term, the question becomes, how does Afghanistan rebuild what has been destroyed, when the same destruction happens every single spring? Roads that are rebuilt this year may be washed away again next year. Homes reconstructed with the same mud brick materials may collapse again the next time heavy rain falls. The UNDP and other organizations have pointed to solutions. Flood retaining walls, early warning systems, retrofitted buildings, better water management. A flood embankment in Kabul, for example, was estimated to prevent $600,000 in damages every year. An investment of just $180,000 in flood walls could save $13.5 million in future damage. Retrofitting public buildings to withstand both earthquakes and floods could reduce deaths by 90%. These numbers show that the solutions exist. The problem is funding, access, and sustained political will, all of which are in short supply in a country that has been through decades of war and is now governed by authorities with limited international recognition. And in the long term, the climate trajectory is clear. Rainfall patterns are shifting. Glacial melt is accelerating. The seasons are becoming more extreme. Without major investment in resilience, not just emergency response, but permanent infrastructure and planning, Afghanistan will continue to lose hundreds of lives every spring, year after year, and the toll will only climb. Here's the core of this story. Afghanistan is drowning, and it is not a metaphor. Right now, right here, floodwaters are moving through valleys, pouring into homes, washing away roads, and taking lives. In the last 12 days, at least 132 people have been killed. That number is almost certainly going to grow. And yet this crisis is receiving a fraction of the attention that other disasters around the world get. Part of that is because Afghanistan has been in crisis for so long that the world has developed a kind of numbness. Part of it is because access is difficult. Part of it is because these deaths happen across scattered rural communities, not in a single dramatic event that cameras can easily capture. But each of those 132 lives was a person. Each collapsed roof had a family under it. Each flooded road cut off someone from help. And each acre of destroyed farmland means someone will go hungry in the months ahead. Spring in Afghanistan is supposed to be a season of renewal. The snow melts, the rivers rise, the fields turn green. But for far too many Afghans, spring has become the season they fear most, because the water that gives them life is also the water that takes it away. If you found this important, please share this video. These stories need to be heard. More rain is forecast for Afghanistan in the coming days, and the situation could get significantly worse. I'll be tracking this closely and will provide updates as the situation develops.